Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started today with our Ask Me Anything. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining in. And if you want to stream in the comments where you're from, that would be super. We'd like to know where folks are tuning in from today. So I'm Leslie Barkas. I'm the Executive Director of VegFund, and I hope that many of you have joined today, maybe our grantees, or maybe you don't know yet about VegFund, some of you who could be joining. So we are a grant-making organization supporting vegan activism around the world in its many forms. So traditionally, we were supporters, and still are, of the animal rights movement. But over time, we've tried to expand our footprint to support, many great folks who are doing wonderful things out there in the healthcare sector, as well as in the environmental sector. So we wanted to invite one of our board members who joined VegFund in mid-2020, Dr. Scott Stoll. And we are so delighted to collaborate with Dr. Stoll today for this Ask Me Anything. As I said, Dr. Stoll joined the VegFund board in mid-2020, and he's really added deep expertise to VegFund in the area of whole food, plant-based health, and wellness. And he really strengthens our credibility to grow our activist base of those folks working in the plant-based health and wellness area. So if I may introduce Dr. Stoll, who's just a really impressive person, as you will hear in his bio, and we'll soon then let him show you how impressive he is. But he's a visionary who is working holistically to transform healthcare through the power of whole foods, plant-based diets, lifestyle medicine, and the integration of regenerative agriculture. He is the co-founder and the chairman of the PlantRition Project, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, and the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and also of the Regenerative Health Institute, which is a collaborative project with the Rodell Institute. This project is addressing human health, agriculture, and the environment, combining those three areas holistically to, again, transform the healthcare sector. So Dr. Stoll is also an author. He has written books and scientific articles. He's appeared on national TV shows to speak about food as medicine, and has appeared in leading documentaries such as The Game Changers, which I'm sure many of you who are joining us today know The Game Changers. And if all this background were not impressive enough, Dr. Stoll was also a member of the 1994 Olympic bobsled team. And that really impresses me because I've taken a bobsled run once, and it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. So I'm deeply impressed by his Olympic background, and he continues to work with world-class athletes around the world. So welcome, Dr. Stoll, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are so appreciative to have you speak about your work as an activist for whole food, plant-based health and wellness.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leslie. It's such an honor to be with you today, and I really am honored to be a part of the VegFund board and support the amazing work that you all are doing in helping to seed fund and support all of these organizations that are affecting change. And I think one of the reasons I was excited to join the VegFund board is because I believe that it's not one large organization that's going to change the world, but it's lots of little organizations in all of the communities where we have reach that will change the world. So I love what you're doing. I'm honored to be a part of the board. Thank you.
And thank you. And I think that's a really, really valid point. I think a lot of this type of change where you're really looking at culture shift comes from, all these various communities that we stitch together and try to create, kind of this visionary change across the healthcare system. So you're right that, we really want to honor all of our activists who are working across the various areas to speak to their communities to make change. So for the format today, you all are, we hope you'll ask questions by Facebook in the comments, send your questions by comments. And I thought perhaps to get us started, I wanted to ask Dr. Stoll, again, he's got, you have such an impressive list of professional accomplishments that it's really even difficult to know where to begin with questions. But I wanted to focus for a moment on the PlantRition Project, where it seems that you are absolutely playing the role of an activist. And I would like to hear more about, how you got involved, in the Plant Nutrition Project, how you decided to be a co-founder, where I'm sure you could be using your energy every day just seeing patients, but you've taken on a big bite there with the Plant Nutrition Project. So what's that all about, and what was your motivation for serving as an activist in that capacity?
Yeah, it goes back quite a number of years. And I really started, with whole food plant-based nutrition in my practice in 2003, when I noticed that all my patients were telling me they were falling apart. And I thought it was the inevitable consequence of aging, that this is just what happens when we get older. It's bad genes and maybe bad lifestyle, but there's nothing you can do about it. And I had a patient just say to me, "Dr. Stoll, can't you help me? I'm falling apart." And I asked the simple question, "What does falling apart mean to you?" And she told me that her marriage was falling apart because her husband was exhausted taking care of her. They were facing financial bankruptcy. She couldn't travel to see her grandchildren. She was depressed, couldn't attend social activities in church. And then she said, "Can you help me?" And so that started me on my own journey, realizing that, all of these past medical problems were eroding the most valuable part of her life, the quality of life. And it wasn't just managing medical conditions, but she was actually asking me for help to put her life back together again and restore quality of life. And I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't even know it was possible. So I spent a number of years just trying to understand if disease is reversible, and if so, how. And it took me probably 2.5 years of my life to figure out that it's what we put on our plate. And it's restoring a plate of whole plant foods that actually reverses disease. And it can't be partial. You may make a little bit of progress, but when you have disease, it has to be, 100% whole food plant-based nutrition that actually revitalizes, restores, and nourishes the body in such a way that it can begin turning back the clock on those diseases. That took me a number of years, and saw incredible transformation in my own practice. And I was visiting with a friend of mine that also helps me with the immersions that we do for Whole Foods Market. And I was just telling my friend Tom, I said, it took me so long to learn how to do this, not only to understand, what to recommend people, but how to implement this in practice. I just said to him, we need to start a conference to begin educating healthcare providers around the world about the power of plant-based nutrition and how to implement this in your practice. And my friend Tom he's a great spirit, and he said, "Great, let's do it." So we jumped in 2013. We started a conference, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference. And we had about 180 professionals that attended from 12 countries. And we were so successful that year, we decided to do it again next year because we had enough money to do it again. And so we started a conference, and we decided to wrap a not-for-profit around that to, not only just educate healthcare professionals, but really push into healthcare and go to places where they're not even thinking about, plant-based nutrition as a solution for disease. And, rather than, always preaching to the choir, which is fun, I love to go speak at events where, people applaud you when you walk up and they're excited about your message. I really wanted to focus, and this is kind of the activist part of me, on going into healthcare systems and hospitals and doing grand rounds where they've never heard about this before. And, encountering the friction and the opposition to the message, but going in such a way that they would receive the message, because I was leading with science. I was leading with a clear message that was, advocating for the reversal of disease and the restoration of quality of life of patients. And I found that, remarkably, even though there's friction and antagonism, typically by the end of my presentations, it was very well received. And so the organization has grown, and we have now conferences, non-COVID years, obviously, but New York, California, we have about 1,200 healthcare providers that will come from 26 countries. We helped to start one in Melbourne, Australia. I worked with Prince Khalid to start a conference in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 2019, and we're doing another week-long lifestyle medicine initiative in Saudi Arabia, and actually working with the government to implement lifestyle medicine within the healthcare policies of the country, which is really exciting. And we're starting another conference in Bangkok, Thailand. And so, through these conferences, we're really trying to reach healthcare providers that may be interested or have thought about diet and nutrition as a possible intervention, or people that have never encountered this before, because obviously we didn't get training in medical school. And we want to reach these providers, bring them in, show them the science, teach them how to implement this in their practice, and come along with supportive materials and science to help begin transforming their practice. Because, we also realize, and this is also kind of the activism point of our project too, is that we recognize that each healthcare provider manages about 2,500 patients. So for every healthcare provider that we touch that takes this message to their patients, they have an exponential impact upon their local populations. They're also leaders in their community, and so we really try to equip them, encourage them to take leadership roles in their community through educational opportunities, not-for-profit activities in their local communities, so that they can begin affecting change. And I think I'll just finish with just an example of how this has worked, because it's really exciting. In 2015, I was invited to speak at Midland, Texas, which is cattle country and oil country, certainly not a bastion of health by any means. And I think there's maybe only like 2 vegans in the area back then in 2015. I was invited by a friend of mine, Dr. Staten Autry, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon, to do grand rounds at the hospital. And so I went and did grand rounds and presented, and we had a really robust audience, and sparked some interest. And Staten, and this is why I love local leadership, Staten kind of took that ball and then started forming a local support group for journals and kind of an ongoing conversation with some of the hospital administrators. One of those administrators was a woman named Marcy Madrid, who's currently the Vice President of Population Health. And at that time, she had developed multiple sclerosis, significant lesions in her brain and spinal cord with really dramatic symptoms that were pushing her to the level of disability. She's a mother of 6 children, very active in the community, very active in the hospital, but was barely making it through the day. So we worked with Marcy. She transformed her diet, took on a lifestyle of whole food plant-based nutrition, started reducing stress, and 6 months later, all of her symptoms were gone. She had a repeat MRI with a MS specialist in Dallas, Texas, and all of the lesions were gone on her brain and on her spinal cord. He was so excited about what he was seeing. He said, "I've never seen this before. I didn't even know this was possible." So he started diving into the research, and now he advocates a whole food plant-based diet for all of his patients and is actually doing research. Because of Marcy's transformation, I was going back on a yearly basis doing educational programs and lectures in the area, and they developed an annual conference now that's 750 people that come to hear about plant-based nutrition in the community. They developed a lifestyle medicine center inside of their hospital. Community gardens are now accessible both at the hospital and at schools. They developed a curriculum for the schools to educate children on whole food plant-based nutrition. And we've worked to create a program for the companies there, and I've lectured to a number of the companies about the benefits of moving their employees off of all of the animal-based fast food, junk food, onto a whole food plant-based diet, because many of the companies are self-insured. It's a way for them to actively save money. So it's an entire community that's transformed because this is the activism part. You're willing to go into a place where there's not a lot of support. There's maybe friction, but you just keep seeding. It's like a gardener. You keep planting seeds, cultivating, watering, and it's amazing what kind of growth can come out of those opportunities.
That's a really astounding and impressive story. I mean, that's really, really something. So you talked about seeding and then, in so many words, not giving up. So what typically, what does that reluctance or that hesitation look like, and how do you overcome it? And then how do you just hang in there and get people to continue to engage with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've always had the philosophy that I always lead with love and I lead with compassion, because I recognize that there was a time in my life when I didn't know better. And so I was just doing what I had always done. I didn't know any better until I learned, and then I could do better. And that's one of Maya Angelou's wonderful quotes. I did then what I knew how to do, but now that I know better, I do better. And so I was one of those for many years, all the way through my education, my residency. I didn't know better. And so I just approach people that they just don't know yet. And that it sometimes takes time and processing for some people to make a change. And so by, at least through love and respect, gaining access into their life that, you know, I'll be invited back again for another conversation, and I can come back again for another conversation, and developing relationships over time through respect, there's a great opportunity to affect significant change. There are a number of physicians, you know, during that first visit to Midland, Texas, who thought I was absolutely nuts and didn't believe in anything that I was saying. But, you know, 3 years later, they are advocating, you know, for a whole food plant-based diet with their patients. You know, they have come along. It just took them enough time. And it's one of the lessons that I've learned, I think, through the years in doing this and working in lots of different healthcare systems, is that oftentimes, you know, faithful persistence will win out if you have the truth on your side. And, you know, it's easy to sometimes give up when we encounter friction, we encounter resistance. But, you know, developing relationships and respect and being invited back is one of the greatest opportunities to affect change in those healthcare systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or any system.
So do you think that reluctance was that it just felt like a huge task, or did they not believe that there was any science, you know, behind your message, or what were people reacting to, do you think?
You know, I think it's a lot of things. You know, one, in healthcare, and I think this is probably true of a lot of industries, there's a lot of, and I think it's not always, maybe not always recognized, but there's a level of pride in every industry, and there's a lot of pride in healthcare. There's pride in, you know, our education, what we've been taught, what we know. And, you know, to have somebody come in and threaten some of that knowledge base, and you know, for someone to recognize, you know what, maybe I don't know it all, maybe I don't have all the answers, and maybe what I learned was insufficient, takes a degree of humility. So I think that's part of it. I think there's a lot of cultural bias around diet and nutrition, and a lot of misunderstandings that, you know, especially because of the diet industry, that diets really don't work. People can't keep weight off. Diet is maybe good enough to just like slow down disease or prevent maybe a couple of diseases. So people have they've never had the opportunity to see the potential of disease. And so they have a lot of misconceptions and belief systems that need to be dismantled first before you can reassemble a new belief system. Just as a side note, one of the powerful ways that I've discovered to dismantle belief systems is through testimonies. And, you know, while I recognize this is not complete science, it's not interventional randomized control trials that everybody looks for in healthcare, you know, a valid testimony with medical evidence can really begin at least tearing down some of those systems of belief for people. Just like with Marcy Madrid, I'll often tell her story, and I have all the MRIs and the results, and I can show pre and post MRIs. Lesions on the brain, no lesions on the brain in 6 months with no symptoms. And just that alone is something that they believed was not possible, but now they see it's possible, and that opens them up to receive new information. You know, and I also think that, you know, there's a lot of, especially around diet and nutrition, a lot of very deeply held personal beliefs, emotional eating patterns, food addictions around food that people don't want to necessarily admit that they have. And so when you present this to them, and, or, you know, even though it may not be directly presented that you're asking them to make a change, the idea that you're presenting, you know, get rid of animal products, get rid of processed food, sugar, fat, and salt, becomes very threatening, because those are the foods that they actually are eating to feel better. And so, you know, you're touching on some very deep, sometimes very deep emotional triggers when you bring this up. And so, you know, that's why I've learned to be patient over time. And sometimes it just takes time for people to process and more information.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have to be patient, right, as activists, and particularly for this particular topic that is just so, you know, deeply seated in culture and family and what we know, and it's not easy. So I can really appreciate what a struggle it must have been. We do have a question from.
I think that's a challenge, Leslie. You're right. I think you bring up such an important point that, you know, it's hard for us to be patient when we see injustice that needs to be corrected, or when we see an opportunity to fix something that needs to be fixed. But it requires not just us to fix the problem. It requires the the collective group of people that are involved in that industry to come alongside of us to help us fix the problem. And so, it can be frustrating for us that are looking to affect change, because we know we have an answer, and we want to see that answer applied, immediately across the sphere of that industry. But it's going at it like with a hammer, will only end up, causing problems and closing doors. And so, as much as we don't want to, take time, it does take time sometimes to open the doors that can lead to much more rapid change and adoption, through an accelerated, accelerated change over time. And so we just have to be faithful in that.
Right, absolutely. So we're getting a few questions in from the people who have tuned in today. One person is asking, and I was thinking about this myself. So many of our community are animal rights activists, or they might be doing activism for the purpose of the environment, but they're very interested in this healthcare angle, yet they're not healthcare professionals. So, we want folks to be respectful of what their level of expertise may be as they go out into reluctant communities. So someone is asking, do we have definitive research showing that naturally occurring trans fat in meat and dairy is bad for human health? Like it says, like artificially introduced trans fats. And the person says, I thought the IOM at one point said, or might still state, that naturally occurring trans fats could have some health benefits. So do you have any comment about that question? And by the way, if you could tell everybody what the IOM is, that would be great.
Yeah, IOM is Institute of Medicine, and they're one of the kind of leaders in developing general recommendations for healthcare and medicine. But yes, there's obviously there's tremendous evidence on the side of artificial trans fats, which led to the ban on trans fat in industry, including fast food, and you still find trans fats, unfortunately, in a lot of foods like Oreos. So, trans fats are very unhealthy. There is evidence that does demonstrate that trans fats in animal products do cause inflammation and turn on those inflammatory switches in the body. The Institute of Medicine's recommendation that trans fats may be helpful. I think that the key words there may be, so it certainly has not been identified that these trans fats are beneficial, and there is evidence on the other side that trans fats can be harmful even in animal products. And after this, what I'll do is put together a couple of links that I'll share with you, Leslie, that you can share with the group that would include some of the research and maybe in a thoughtful way. I think Dr. Greger has a nice video that I can also pull together that will highlight the detrimental effects of trans fats in animal products for human health.
Okay, that'd be terrific, because we will be sending the video out, for people to pick up on at a later stage. So we'd love to have those resources if you could forward those to me. Karen Olson thank you. Karen Olson has asked a question or made a statement. She said she wants to work with physicians to do what you're describing. It said, my cardiologist heads up a hospital here in Dallas, so yay, another convert in Texas, and has expressed interest in having me work with his patients as a health coach. Do you consult with health coaches to help them effectively work with the healthcare system? I'm an IIN grad and continues studies in functional health coaching, trying to figure out how to pull it all together.
Yeah, wonderful, Karen. That's fantastic. Congratulations. And a couple of comments. One, I'm really excited that your cardiologist recognizes that it's a team approach. I think that's one of the shortcomings of medicine for so long, is that we've had this kind of organizational chart that starts with the physician and then goes down. I've always been an advocate of an inverted organizational chart, where it's somebody like a physician or healthcare system that actually works with the team and empowers individuals to bring about change. And so it is a team approach that will lead to transformation in patients. And you're exactly right. Our organization can help you, the Plant Nutrition Project. We have a lot of resources, lots of educational materials that can help support you in working with cardiovascular patients. Dr. Kim Williams, who is the past president of the American College of Cardiology, is on our advisory board, and he's also the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. And so that's a great resource, and he is a great resource as well. So the plantnutritionproject.org is a tremendous resource. If you need anything specifically, you can email us, and we'll get you all the materials that you need to start working with your cardiologist. And if your cardiologist hasn't found us yet, please tie him into our organization. He can join our virtual conferences, and we can continue his education so that you can be a powerful team working together. But that's really, really exciting. And I believe that, I've really began to see this in the last 5 years, that health coaches may be one of the most important people in a healthcare team. Physicians can kind of plant the seed about the power of nutrition, and patients want their doctors to talk about nutrition. 86% of patients say they want their doctors to tell them what to eat. So, if a physician can at least start the process, a health coach and a dietitian can pick up on that, and the real change comes in that daily support and weekly support through health coaching. So I really believe that what you're doing is critically important to the long-term transformation of patients. And I want to applaud you for jumping in and being willing to learn more and to engage with cardiologists and other healthcare providers. Well done.
And Karen thanks you, and she's going to show him this video. So wonderful.
Oh, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just have one note, Leslie, if I can just jump in. When we look at the diseases that are most rapidly impacted by a lifestyle intervention with a whole food plant-based diet, it's type 2 diabetes, it's metabolic syndrome, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. And I've had a number of patients that I've worked with in partnership with cardiologists who have reversed their cardiovascular disease, discontinued nearly all or all of their medications, and gone on to live incredibly happy, healthy lives. Some going from unable to walk to their mailbox due to persistent angina or chest pain, to jogging miles in a year's time, and just incredible transformation. So many things are possible. But what I've learned through the years is that when you're sick, you have to fight with every bite. And one of the reasons that people don't see significant change when they're utilizing diet as an intervention is they are not utilizing the maximum capacity of a diet. If you only go halfway in the diet, you'll see maybe a quarter of the benefit.
So do you see any incremental advantages at all if people are following kind of halfway, or is it is pretty much all or nothing?
No, the research shows that, for every additional serving of whole plant foods that people add to their plate, there's a reduction in risk of disease, there's a reduction in inflammation in their body, there's an improvement in their epigenetics, it enhances the production of nitric oxide in their blood vessels, which opens up blood vessels. The fiber feeds the microbiome in their gut. It's better for animals, it's better for the environment. So every single serving is beneficial. And so, while I'll tell people if you're fighting disease, you have to fight with every bite, and you really do need to maximize the food on your plate. For those that are not ready to go all the way, I'll take whatever they can give me, and I'll take them down the road, and I'll ask them to give me a little more in the future. But every serving is beneficial. It's beneficial for every part of the food ecosystem or the food web. So I do encourage people to just add more plants, because it will push out everything else. It'll push out animal products, processed food, and it will be beneficial for everyone.
And what should the plate look like as a split between fruits and vegetables and maybe legumes and what have you?
Yeah, so my wife has a cookbook. I don't have one right here, but on the back of our cookbook, we have a picture of a plate. And so what we typically tell people is half of your plate should be a nice, robust, like leafy green salad with a lot of vegetables. You can put on some hemp seeds. 25% should be some kind of a cooked or raw vegetable, and broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, however you want to cook it or prepare it. And then 25% is a cooked dish. And this is where, this plate works pretty well for helping people transition out of using animal products, because in the cooked dish, we just simply tell people, you can often make whatever you would make, casseroles, soup, stews, and in place of meat, you add beans, lentils, chickpeas, veggies, if you want to, some tofu or tempeh. And so it makes it a very easy way for people to begin changing their plate without creating too much disruption.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the disruption, and you're talking about working in Midlands and other hospitals, do you see as much reluctance from patients as you do the medical community, or are the patients more amenable to hearing what you have to say since they're affected with some disease?
It's a really good question. And I would say it's mixed on both sides. In the last 3 to 4 years, I would say the medical community is much more willing to listen and engage in the conversation. I think more information has kind of trickled down or made its way into the healthcare industry, that more doctors are willing to listen and actually talk about a plant-based diet and open to the research. Patients are kind of mixed. What's amazing to me is that, and I see this often, I have a patient that is really sick, and I tell them the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet, that it can restore their quality of life, reverse their disease, but they're not interested. And it always just points me back to the power of food. Food is, it's not, we say food is medicine, but it's so much more. Food is cultural, traditional, it's emotional, it's religious, it's such a cornerstone in our lives in so many ways. And we have relationships with food, and for some people, breaking that relationship with food and all of its ties into their lives seems more difficult than just living with their disease. And so I'm often surprised that some people will not take me up on that opportunity to help them. But I think part of the reason that patients are reluctant is for a number of reasons. One, doctors have never really believed that diet will make a difference, and so they hear from their healthcare provider, disbelief. Even when they tell them to change their diet, they're receiving the nonverbal communication from their doctor that, I don't believe you can do it. Diet is not that powerful. So just, try to do something, make a few changes. And none of us will do that if there's no passion and belief from, the person of authority that's trying to help us.
Right.
Two, I think the diet industry has lied to all of us. And, so many people have tried diets. And if you look at the research, there was a large meta-analysis that looked at all of the, 900 studies on diet. And they found at the end of the day, only 20% of people, 15% of people were able to keep 20 pounds off for 5 years. So 85% of people fail. So diet industry it's a failed industry. And most people have been through multiple diets. And so they have a belief system that, one, it's really hard. It's full of sacrifices, deprivation, starvation, discomfort, tasteless food. It's expensive and it doesn't work. And so we have to, we're encountering all those challenges and hurdles when we're talking about changing people's diets. And so we have to kind of, find a way around or go through those barriers to help help them begin to have a belief that this will actually make a difference in their lives. And that's where I think these testimonies come in so helpfully in helping people to achieve a new belief system. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that finding the thing that matters most to the patient, the pain point, it's often called, or the hot button in marketing, finding that which matters most and talking to them about how their diet will change that part of their life. If it's a young person, I'll talk about acne or performance. If it's an old person, maybe it's impotence, or if they don't like their medications, it's discontinuing medications. So it's learning to listen to people and identifying what they really desire, what they need most, and helping them to see how the diet will enhance that part of their life.
Great. So Jyoti Chawla had asked a question before the internet went out. How do you overcome apathy? And maybe you've just answered that, is find the trigger point or the hot button of a particular person. and just having conversation with them? Is that what you might recommend then?
That, and I believe something that's so powerful, hope overcomes apathy. What's really
Mm.
interesting, when we inspire hope in someone, they've done functional MRIs on people's brains when they get hope, and they find that the regions of their brain that become activated are the areas of their brain that are involved in long-term planning, rational logical thought, and organization of a plan. So when somebody has hope, it's more than just hope as a feeling. They actually are beginning to lay down ideas, to strategize and develop a plan for long-term success to reach the vision that has inspired their hope. So hope is really important, and medicine does a terrible job at inspiring hope. You know, we were all trained to give bad news all the time. It's the worst case I've ever seen. There's nothing you can do about it. It's only going to get worse. You're going to need more medication. We just dispel bad news all day long. We never inspire hope. So inspiring hope for people is really, really important. And, you know, it's part of the fuel that leads to motivation that affects long-term change.
Yeah, thank you. So on that note, what would you like to see happen within the healthcare system? I mean, what needs to happen? I'm sure there is what you would like to see happen, but what needs to happen in the healthcare system so that we can get this information out and that it be accepted?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that needs to happen in the healthcare system, and it's a little maybe different place to start, but it's value-based care. So right now, healthcare systems and physicians are financially paid for volume and for procedures. And you know, it makes it very difficult for all of us that are trying to use lifestyle medicine and nutrition in our practices, because you know, if you're seeing 3 or 4 patients an hour, it makes it actually, based on reimbursement numbers, it's hard to keep an office open. You need to see 6 patients an hour, and those that are doing more procedures or more volume, you know, the healthcare system is making more money. So until we transition over to value-based care, I don't think we're going to see widespread adoption of lifestyle medicine. We're seeing more of it, and there are healthcare systems, and I've talked to many CEOs that have told me they know that value-based care is coming, but they're riding the old system as long as they can, because right now there's no financial incentive for value-based care. So we need some, you know, some health insurance companies, and ultimately the government, which is usually slower, but we need some forward-thinking health insurance companies to start reimbursing healthcare systems and physicians for value-based care. That's the first thing. You know, two, I think from a macro perspective, looking at healthcare, we do need more research. Now, we don't need more research to convince us that a whole food plant-based diet is the best diet for reversing non-communicable diseases. We have that information. We need more large interventional trials to demonstrate to the healthcare system and the government that this is the right intervention, because they make decisions based on large trials and meta-analyses which are built on the large trials. So we'll need some more research long-term to do that. But you know, one of the reasons that we started our organization and we're reaching individual practitioners is because we believe it's a grassroots change that will, you know, flow up through healthcare systems and eventually reach the government levels to affect change more quickly than if we were to start an organization with limited funds and start trying to lobby Congress. So we've gone from the grassroots level because we believe that healthcare providers are very influential people, amazingly talented, and by empowering, you know, tens of thousands of healthcare providers, they can go back into their communities. They can, you know, begin working in the areas where they have a sphere of influence, and you know, together we can create change much more quickly.
Great, thank you, Scott. Jill has a question, says, how do you think you could utilize registered dietitians who have a lot of experience in the nutrition world and even the culinary world to integrate with doctors?
Oh, that's wonderful, Jill. You are absolutely right. This is a key component of the team. You know, a ideal healthcare team is a healthcare provider, like a nurse practitioner, a physician, paired with a nurse, with a dietitian, and with a health coach, maybe a fitness professional, but oftentimes a health coach can do that too. So that's an ideal practical team. And as an example, there was a great study that was done at Geisinger Health in Pennsylvania, where they identified a group of people living with diabetes they had poorly controlled blood sugars, and they had some level of food insecurity. And by looking at their claims data, they determined that this group of people, each individual was costing the healthcare system $240,000 a year in healthcare expenses. So they decided to approach this from a team approach. And they put together that team that I just mentioned, plus a pharmacist. And they actually spent $2,000 a year preparing meals for these individuals to help overcome the food insecurity issue. They partnered with local grocery stores and food banks to feed them. And this was Geisinger. It was predominantly, probably 90% whole food plant-based meals. At the end of 12 months, and this was published in the Harvard Business Review, the healthcare cost went from $240,000 per person per year to $48,000 per person per year. And their hemoglobin A1Cs, the measure of blood sugar over 3 months, dropped dramatically, which correlated with a 40% reduction in their risk of chronic disease and long-term complications. So the team approach is incredibly effective. And so again, Jill, as I think I mentioned to Karen, if you'll just connect with us at our organization, we're really working on ways to build a platform to facilitate a team approach to lifestyle medicine. And I really believe that is the future.
Thanks. Ellen is expressing that she's saying that they're working on a bill in Colorado to add vegan options for hospitals, long-term care, prisons. And she says, as you know, that's not always available. So I'm sure they have more.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. And if we look at the food that we feed people in our healthcare systems and nursing homes and food banks, that we're feeding the homeless, something near and dear to our family's heart, it's the worst food. It's not only is it non-vegan, it's like the worst processed food, and it just makes people sicker. You can go to have heart surgery and you show up, post-op in the CCU, cardiac coronary care unit, and they give you bacon and eggs, post cabbage or post surgery for your heart. It's the absolute worst thing that you could do for your heart. It causes all your blood vessels to constrict down, causes inflammation within 4 hours. So you're absolutely right. These people should have an opportunity to be fed the healing foods, the plant-based foods that are going to actually enhance their recovery rather than send them backwards and really set them up for the next surgery. So well done on that bill. I support you in any way that possible. If you need any resources from our organization, let us know.
Yeah, Ellen added that they have their first Zoom meeting about this on Thursday with Dr. Neil Bernard. So
great.
Sounds like
congratulations.
Yeah, good, great. It's 2:52, and despite our internet glitch, maybe I'd like to throw out one more question and see if any other questions come in from the audience. But I know, Scott, you said you would send some resources that, say, animal rights activists or lay people could turn to try to get the messaging right. Is there anything that you would want to add of people who are not experts but are interested in getting out the messages? What's the most responsible way for them to do so?
I think the health message, like I always encourage people, one of the most powerful messages that you have is your own testimony. When we have people that come to our immersions and they're all excited about all the information, they want to tell all their friends and family the science of plant-based nutrition, I just tell them, again, lead with love and always start with your testimony. It's very difficult for people to criticize a personal testimony of recovery of health. And that's often the best open door. The second thing I always tell people is that I'm not a big advocate for salt, but if you give people enough salt, if you're giving them just enough information to make them thirsty, they'll ask for a glass of water. They'll ask for something more. If we give them too much salt, it chokes them and they're not going to want more. So less is better. Give them enough information that it makes them interested and excited and request more. But we don't want to dump all the information on them because they may not be ready, and it may close the door when the door, at least we had our foot in the door at the beginning. And this is again where these testimonies come in really amazingly to help open doors if you're just sharing these amazing stories of people that reverse their disease. Next, there's some great organizations that I think are a wonderful way to share it with the general public. Michael Greger's nutritionfacts.org is an amazing way to share information in an abbreviated 4 to 5 minute, very educational and fun video. So if somebody wants more information, you can look up cardiovascular disease on nutritionfacts.org. Those are great videos to send people that kind of whet their appetite for more information. Dr. Neil Barnett's organization and ours have downloadable educational materials that you can download from Plant Nutrition Project or pcrm.org as well, and those are great to share with people. But I think my advice is lead with love. Don't give them too much information. Lead with your own success story. Share other personal testimonies of stories that of people that have had transformed lives. That would be the best way to enter into that conversation.
Okay, wonderful. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I don't know if there are any final questions or comments, but you're really kind to come back for those of you when we lost our connection. Thanks for coming back. And apologies, Scott, for the disruption, but I'm glad we were able to reconnect and kick out another 20 minutes or so of your expertise, which was wonderful. So if there's not any other questions, I'll give it a few moments for people to maybe pipe in through the comments. If not, as I said, we'll put together a video and send this out, and that might stimulate some other questions. And you can always connect with Dr. Scott Stoll through the Plant Nutrition Project, and I'm sure he would be happy to lead folks down the right path. But we really appreciate everyone's time today, and really great information. I learned a lot, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Leslie. It's been an honor to be with you, and thanks to all of you that joined us today. I sincerely appreciate your time and know it's valuable, and both Leslie and I are very grateful that you spent some time with us today, and we wish you all the best as you continue to affect change, as you're an ambassador for this important message for your community in the world. So keep going. We support you in every way.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.